Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
And welcome into what was Conduits of Trouble, but for the National Football League season and Vikings in particular, we are now going to call Purple Access. Does that ring a bell? Zulgad, Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune sports columnist, and my longtime buddy. We covered the Vikings, of course, at the Strib. Executive producer Declan Goff. Yes, brought to you by, well, not just my friends, ladies and gentlemen, but Chip's friends too, Surly Brewing. There's nothing better than a Furious. And also want to give a shout out to our friends from TCL because we bring this to you from the home base of the TCL broadcast studios. Enjoy more of what you love, TCL. All right, Chip Scoggins, are you set to go on our new endeavor, which sounds like our old endeavor years ago of Purple Access?
It sounds awfully familiar.
Uh-huh.
It's like a warm blanket. It's like a warm blanket.
PurpleAccess.com. PurpleAccess.com. All right. Let's start. We are September 12th is the opener against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Vikings have their last preseason game tomorrow night. We're recording this on Thursday. It's a Friday night game in Kansas City. I will throw it to you. I will lob you a pitch and ask you this question. As we get closer to the start of the regular season, what intrigues you most about this team, questions-wise, and either good or bad observations that you have?
I'll have a list of them. How's that? We love lists.
Hell yeah.
One is the most obvious, is the quarterback. And just the tension that has been surrounding him throughout this entire training camp, not only with the vaccination stuff and the head coach calling him out publicly, not by name, but by inference. We know who he was talking about specifically. And then Everson Griffen come back to the team, and he had some unflattering Twitter tweets about him this offseason, and now he's back, and that's a little awkward, I would say. And then I think we talked about this last week, Judd. Cousins has not looked particularly sharp in practice. In times, I can't say it. I've been to every practice, but in the times I've been there, and we obviously didn't do much in the other preseason game, the second one where he got some action, and so I'm curious to see what he looks like, right? With Dalvin, with everybody there, I would say he's number one. Number two, what is going on with Anthony Barr?
Yeah.
And is he going to be available? The longer he's out, it becomes clear he's going to need some time to ramp up and get ready physically before they put him out there. So I would say his status for the opener is definitely in jeopardy. And then three, I would say the offensive line. Is that unit going to be any better than what we've seen? So I would say those are but there is a lot of intrigue with this. I mean, the defense, you got a lot of new faces, a lot of guys coming back. Are they going to be demonstrably better than we saw last year? I think they will, but there's intrigue there. But to me, it still comes down to the quarterback and what does he look like given everything that's kind of happened in this training camp.
Yeah, and it sounds like, so Mike said in his press conference on Wednesday, it sounds like he's going to do starter-wise a lot of what he did on Saturday, which means Cousins will play, the first team offensive line will play. Thielen will definitely not play because he got hurt against the Colts. Jefferson, I'm sure, will not play. Dalvin Cook won't play. So you bring up an interesting point, which is the first real opportunity to get a look at the first team offense is going to be against the Bengals on September 12th. And yeah, Kirk, now they scrimmaged on Tuesday, I believe, Chip, and they went through a pretty lengthy scrimmage, and I thought Kirk looked fine. Like, he didn't look great, but he didn't look bad. So I guess I am curious how the relationship, where it's at between the coach and the quarterback. It's never been great. I would say it's as close to being fractured right now as possible. So yeah, there is, I think you put it perfectly without trying to pass judgment of like, this team's a mess, or I really think they're going to be good. I think your word is absolutely the right one. Intrigue, like a lot of unknown.
Yeah. And it's, you go back to the Zimmer Cousins relationships, and I don't know that Zimmer's ever going to get chummy with any player. Certainly, maybe not on the offensive side. I think he has a really good relationship on the defensive side with Anthony Barr and Harrison Smith and some of the vets like that. But think about some of the things he said, and think about how dug in it appears that Cousins is on the vaccination front, and the things that Zimmer has said about some of the things these guys read is out there. I got to imagine his comments with some of those players has created a problem, with him. Now, does that mean you can't win and can't have a professional relationship? Probably. I mean, it doesn't mean that. I'm not saying that. And I don't know how much interaction he would have with Cousins ordinarily the last couple of years. I mean, I guess you have to have some if you're the head coach and quarterback, but because Mike's a defensive guy, it's not like some of the other arrangements we've seen that you see where the head coach is the offensive guy. So I don't think they're going to have the same kind of relationship, but that is an element to this. And, if he doesn't play well, is Mike going to, or if he makes a bad mistake, is Mike going to grumble publicly in the ways that maybe more forceful than we've seen in the past? So that's where I think, and what Howard Cousins play, I'm not going to excuse if they play bad, but on when he played Chiefs, but not having Dalvin in there and
yes,
your two best receivers, I'm not sure how much you're going to gain by that. I mean, I guess the offensive line needs the work, but when you don't have your two top receivers and your Pro Bowl running back, then how good can you really look?
Yeah, and I think if they had looked good in the 3 series against the Colts, they probably wouldn't play. But in fairness, too, the Chiefs are going to play their starters according to Andy Reid for the first half. So, like, this is all this is all the new thing of 3 preseason games is different than the 4. And guys used to play a ton in the third one, which it sounds like the Chiefs are still going to treat this as preseason game 3, and then you just don't have the 4th one. So I hesitate to read too much into what Mike is doing here or not doing, but yeah, I'm very intrigued to see not necessarily how Cousins looks tomorrow night, but I'm very intrigued to see when the lights go on September 12th and Cousins has Jefferson and Thielen and Cook. Do they pick up and bang, bang, bang? Do they? And here's the other thing that I don't think we're talking about enough. And it's occurred to me throughout the course of these games as the offense and I'm talking about the whole thing, does not look great. Klint Kubiak's a kid calling plays for the first time, and that's a big deal. And I know his dad is Gary, and Gary is a goat in some ways of offensive coordinators. But Mike Zimmer, Chipper, is an intimidating presence. Mike has a lot of philosophical views on how offenses should run that make him intimidating. And I think that Clint's going to pick up the ball and be like, it's going to be just like Stefanski. I got to see that first.
Yeah, and I would think that it becomes more streamlined and maybe a little more creative as the season goes along, as these guys play more. I mean, I don't think you're going to see everything in week 1, right? Because it's just that comes from playing time and comfortability and seeing what guys can do and how much can the offensive line hold up. I mean, they have to have some question marks about that right now. So I think it'll be, I don't say vanilla, but it's going to be a template that we've seen a lot of Dalvin, and relying heavily on Thielen and Jefferson early on, which is, I'm curious to see how much leeway Zimmer gives Kubiak in terms of new wrinkles, putting his own thumbprints on philosophy. Hey, it's 2nd and 2. Let's take a deep shot here. No, let's run the ball. Which one? Is he going to allow him to
do
that? Yeah.
No. My guess is no.
I would think early on, though. Now, maybe as he gains Zimmer's trust more as the season goes on, maybe that changes. But I think early on, you're going to see them not deviate too much from what we've seen in the past.
Yes, and you're also going to have to be careful early on in the pass game, at least a little bit, with this offensive line. And can Rashad Hill hold up for X amount of games? And by the way, it's going to be multiple games. Like this whole thing of Christian Darrisaw's coming right back. No, he's not. He's on the side. He's a rookie. He has not practiced at all. He is not playing in week 2. I would be absolutely shocked. So if you're going to call pass plays, and I'm talking about deep 9 route type plays to Justin Jefferson, Kirk has to have the protection, because if he doesn't, we've seen that story before, and it's a hit from behind, and unfortunately, oftentimes a fumble.
Yeah, and I think that's part of this whole, and obviously they're evaluating during training camp and every day in practice, but it's not the same as seeing how these guys are going to perform in the game. It's just not. And so I think there is, for the coaches, it's going to be a little bit of a learning about their players and personnel in these games. Is finding, okay, what really can Rashad Hill do as the left tackle, and what can Odu do as our guard,
Yep.
and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think they have to get a better understanding of what that line is to figure out, okay, what can you do schematically and that type of thing.
On Kirk Cousins, are you buying his answer? I think it was to my old colleague, your current colleague, Mark Craig's question about what Everson Griffen tweeted about him and then deleted back in January. And Mark asked him about, hey, how's that going now? Griffen had told us a couple days ago that he was going to apologize. Kirk claimed that he did apologize in January. And I don't know, he did apologize on a tweet. I don't know if they talked personally at the time. But what's your interpretation of that? And what's your interpretation of the fact that they did sign a guy who, by the way, could help on third downs, but was very harsh. And I also think made some good points about the fact that Mike didn't want Kirk on Twitter and made those things public.
Well, I think it just shows that they don't care what Kirk Cousins thinks if it's going to hurt his feelings. There might be some. How many quarterbacks in that same situation in NFL would the team say, we're not doing that because we're not going to upset Patrick Mahomes or whoever? And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, but it just speaks to me that
right,
they don't care if it hurts the feelings or makes it awkward or whatever. And did they apologize? I'll take it for the word and say they did. Does it mean they're going to have dinner together on the road? Probably not. It's human nature. If somebody said that about me, I might accept their apology and say, okay, we'll be professional about it, but it doesn't mean we're going to be best friends. And so, I don't know that it's going to cause any kind of huge locker room thing. I don't think it's going to be that. But listen, those players in the locker room know what was tweeted.
Absolutely.
I would think they understand what the dynamics there. So, but is I don't know that it's going to affect the way anything like any locker room. I think it's going to divide the locker room or anything like that. So
no, in fact, I think guys like Ev a lot. I actually think part of the incentive to bring him back is defensively. I think those guys, if not loved him, really liked him. He's a character and he's an odd guy, but he's always going. He's always talking, and I think he brings an element that defensively is probably valuable.
Yeah, and obviously he's high motor and all that, and I don't know. I didn't watch him enough last year to know. Is he truly just a situational guy, or can he be more than that? I still think it's an indictment on Weatherly and Wanham that they don't trust him as a third down pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
You have two guys there, and so is this something that, okay, you bring him in and say he's going to be a situational, and by week 4 he's your starter type thing, or is this really going to be, okay, you're just going to be a third down guy? I think that remains to be seen, but I don't think it's I don't think it's saying a whole lot about the guys that you have there, that you had to bring in a guy as a situational pass rusher.
Right. So, yeah, in the scrimmage on Tuesday, because it was 1s against 1s, 2s against 2s, 3s against 3s, it was very clear that, at least for now, Wanham has won the job, because it was purple jerseys against white jerseys, and Wanham was with the first team, and Weatherly was with the second team. And so I think now it's going to be, I'm sorry, Wanham starts. Griffin's going to be your third down specialist, and Weatherly's going to be a rotational guy, which, by the way, is fine. I think that's what He is. I think this whole notion when Carolina signed him and started him and it didn't go well, I don't think he's a starter. I think what he is a rotational guy who can come in and contribute and will make the roster. But if you put, hey, we think that you can graduate to starting at right end on his plate, I think that's probably asking a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be a surprise cut, you don't think, right?
No. I thought that for a little while, but I don't think he will be now.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, just physically, you look at him, he doesn't have the stature, some of those guys. And so that's probably the right role for him as a situational guy, too. So I'm curious to see how much they use Everson as this thing goes along and figure out, like, how much does he have left? Is he, is 20 plays better for him than 35? You know what I'm saying? Do you get more out of that than what you'd see if he played a lot more? So, yeah, I mean, it's you look, Judd, that defensive line, it has potential to be pretty darn good. I think they're going to be good in the middle with Pierce and Tomlinson, and obviously Hunter. It sounds like he's just had a monster camp. Anytime they go live team periods, he's getting a sack or two. So all the fears, and how much do we talk about this offseason about, well, we don't know where he's going to be at, and there's no guarantees he's going to come back. It looks like that's not even a story anymore.
No, he's looked fantastic. That's I think the most positive, if you were to take, let's say, 2 or 3 incredible positive things from this camp, I would say the fact that Danielle Hunter looks back to being himself. I mean, he is in, not surprisingly, in great shape. But as far as what he's done, there has been nothing where I've said, "Oh boy, that's a big step down." He looks great, and that is fantastic news, because if that's your starting point, that makes your defensive line damn good to start with. And now you've got Pierce and Tomlinson and Richardson. I think when you look at that defensive line now going into the season, there is a lot to really like about it.
Oh, sure. I mean, it was so decimated last year that I know it just drove Zimmer crazy. But now you look at it and you have pass rush and you get the type of interior lineman that he wants, those big run stuffers. So teams aren't just gashing them with the run. I'm sure he probably would have wanted a little more reliability, or somebody who has a little more experience on that other side as a pass rusher, maybe a little more pedigree, so they didn't have to go out and sign Everson as a situational guy. But yeah, I mean, you look at their defense line; it's pretty darn solid, and that should help the linebackers. I mean, I think it sets Kendricks up to have another Pro Bowl or All Pro type year, but this Barr situation, Judd, man, just the lack of information and just lack of clarity on what it is, severity. I mean, I think Zimmer hasn't really touched it more than he's got something going on, right? Is the way he couched it or something.
Well, he did say after the game against the Colts on Saturday, he did acknowledge that he is now concerned because of the time missed. I mean, he hasn't practiced since August 5th, so he ain't playing on September 12th unless he gets back almost right
quickly.
Now. Yeah. And he did also confirm that this has nothing to do with the torn pec, which I thought might be the problem, because torn pecs are hard to come back from. So he acknowledged it's not that. I've heard it's soft tissue and it might be a hamstring, but whatever it is, it's been a real concern.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like when he comes out, because he typically has come out later in practice after they've done an hour or so from getting his treatment, and there's not like an obvious wrap or anything on his body. We're like, okay, it's his knee or it's his shoulder.
Exactly.
So there's none of that, so it's hard to know. But which supports your theory about being a hamstring or soft tissue or something like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, what is his conditioning level at this point? I mean, you don't just get cleared and come out and start playing. I mean, you got to ramp up and have practices and we have no idea like what his conditioning level is. And the same thing with Darisaw. That's like, just because people say, oh, he's going to be good to go for week one because it was a minor surgery. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. I mean, he's basically just walking laps around the practice. I mean, that's not game shape. So it's going to take a while to get up to there.
Yeah, and on Barr too, there's a few things at work here. Keep in mind, he hasn't played in the game since week 2 of 2020. So it's not like he played, 15 games last year and now he's out. He has been He has been basically off a football field now for going on a year. That's a concern. The other thing too, and final cuts are going to be next Tuesday at 3 p.m. and they're going to go from 80 to 53. This is always the case, but I think it's really going to be the case now, Chip. I think the roster that we see, at next Tuesday at, let's say, 5 p.m. ain't even going to be close. I think this team's going to be looking at backup linebackers, backup safeties, backup O-line. And I don't know if they're going to make a trade for or try and go onto the waiver wire for this, but I also think that from what they've seen from 2 games, they have to get a backup QB. It can't be Browning, and Mond is going to make the roster as the 3.
Yeah.
But Kellen Mond can't get near a football field right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, if they don't do that, and I know Cousins has been incredibly durable in his career and hasn't missed games. I mean, you cannot count on. Listen, teams don't count on good health at any position. So you're going to say, well, because our quarterback hasn't been hurt, we're just going to bank. You can't do that. And I don't. You're right. They're going to have to carry 3 quarterbacks this time because Mond's going to be your 3, but you can't put him in a position to be your number 2.
No, I mean they know that.
They saw that. And they saw that, Zimmer talked about it after the game. Is like, hey, the protection is pretty good. We had quarterbacks that were just nervous in the pocket. Well,
right.
Preseason game where you're not getting blitzed, they're not scheming for you. So what are you? I mean, you cannot leave your offense that vulnerable to have one of those guys. And example number 8 million of don't get carried away with a quarterback in 7-on-7 the first 2 weeks of camp. I mean, we saw that, Browning with the scrimmage that Saturday night. Oh, he looks great. It's like he looks like he doesn't even looks like he has the yips right now when he's throwing the ball.
Yes.
So they're going to have to, and I don't know who it is. I don't know who's going to get cut. I don't even know who's on the street, whatever. But I'm sure they're exploring that because, I mean, you can't go into the season with one of these 2 guys as your backup.
No, and I think that if that was not driven home by the 2 preseason games, and by the way, Mon made some nice athletic plays in both of those games, but the key is, as far as like quarterback plays go, not close. If that was not driven home by those 2 games, the scrimmage on Tuesday, Chip, he looked completely lost. He had a tip ball that was picked off by Chaz Surratt. He had a ball where he basically carried it too low, and Armin Watts swatted it out of his hand, picked it up, and scored a touchdown. He had another ball that was almost picked off. I think it was tipped as well by Surratt. And then the third one, or the 4th drive, he might have let him do a field goal attempt at least. But my point is, like, that to me drove home, if you're going against a defense that's sort of prepared, he has to make the roster. He can't be cut, but he also can't play. Yeah. And that's where I think you go out and offer a team. I mean, find a backup QB who's okay. Find a backup QB, send a 7th round pick, a 6th round pick. Don't even chance the guy being claimed off the wire, and just release Browning and take care of that. Because between the Cousins, I know you're right, he's not been hurt, but there's always a first time. And the second thing is being told on a Sunday morning, Kirk Cousins can't play. He is in quarantine.
Or Friday or Saturday. Yeah, I mean, you need.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you need a veteran. And I agree. Trade a pick or whatever, late pick, try to get some guy. And the thing about you're saying about Mond is, like, I'm guessing he wasn't going against the starting defense then either. I mean, you're going against a bunch of backs. No, you're going against 13 guys from second team.
Concern.
Yeah, so it's not like you're facing. He wasn't going against Daniil Hunter and Eric Kendricks in that drill either. So, no, I think they have to do that. And you're right. We always say the final 53. Here's the final 53 at the cuts. That's not the final 53.
And we try to write about it and, like, here's a breakdown of the 53 of which 4 guys you'll never hear from again. They'll be in witness protection by the time tomorrow rolls around.
And it's funny. And Childress used to always say that. He's like, you guys think this is the final roster. It's not. This is going to change it. And I think this year more than any is going to drive that home. And I also wonder, Judd, are you completely comfortable about where they're at cornerback?
Yeah. Completely comfortable. I guess I have to see how Patrick Peterson fares when the season starts. Breland actually, to me,
He looked good.
Both looked really good. Dantzler, you know, I've come around. So I have to admit, and he's a 3rd round pick, so I don't think he gets cut. But I've come around to what you were saying after the Denver game about the possibility of him not making the roster based on this. They are really unhappy with him.
Yeah,
it's not just he sort of struggled. I mean, Adam Zimmer, who is a shrinking violet, when it, you know, I mean, he ain't going to say anything that his dad doesn't want out there. Said that, you know, he has to work harder. He has to work on technique. And oh, by the way, he has to work on special teams. Well, the Cam Dantzlers of the world make the team based partially or largely on special teams. That's a hat trick of an indictment.
Yeah, and you know, just watching him in the practices I've been out there and in that game, I said to you guys, like, are we sure this guy makes the team? And I think he will, just because they, you know, one, they don't want to give up on high draft picks like that. I will say this: I think if Jeff Gladney was still here, he would get cut.
Mm-hmm.
Would have a bigger chance. But the fact that Gladney's, you know, you had to get rid of him too. Are you going to get rid of Dantzler as well? So I think that probably works in his favor. But yeah, he's at best your 5th guy, right? So it goes Peterson, Breland, Mackenzie Alexander, Chris Boyd, then him, then Dantzler. At best, he's your 5th bet. So
now
if we're arguing about your number 5 cornerback, you can say, well, they're okay there, but
it's a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a 3rd round pick, and hey, all it takes is an injury to one of those guys, and now you're relying on Chris Boyd. And I know he's had a good camp, and they feel good about where he's going, but you know, we make fun of Zimmer saying just one more. It's not the way these offenses are. It's not, you know, it's not silly to worry about, to always be worried about, do you have enough cornerbacks?
If Patrick Peterson doesn't rebound and play significantly better than he did for the Cardinals last season, it's going to be a big problem. If he does, they should be fine. But yeah, that's the one. And, you know, he is not going to play in a preseason game. I saw KJ Osborne make a really nice catch against him on a deep ball from Kirk this week, but it was the type of play that he probably should break up. So yeah, I think there's a definite question mark there of is this guy going to rebound and give them what Terrence Newman did, which was really good play for a few years, or is he just old? And we aren't going to know that until they play games.
Yeah, I will say this, just watching the few practices out there, I wouldn't say you looked at him like he looks old. Like he can't run anymore. I wouldn't say that at all. Now, are you going to sit there and say, that's Patrick Peterson, Hall of Famer, you know, that type thing? I don't think anybody's going to say that. But what is he, you know? But I don't – he looks – just watching him in drills, he still looks pretty good, right? He looks like he's your number 1 guy for sure. But is he going to be that lockdown, I'm taking the best wide receiver you have type cornerback?
No, I don't think he's there.
Much anyways. He trusted Xavier Rhodes a little bit to do that, right?
Right.
But is Peterson going to fill that role?
No. I think they're going to play sides. And in fact, the thing about this is if Breland, and it was very short and it was a preseason game, but Breland's an aggressive player. And
sure,
the one problem is Breland and Peterson draw flags. They're going to draw flags. And Mike's going to get frustrated. But if Breland plays like I've seen him play, I actually think that they will never have a guy follow a receiver around, because I think both guys will probably be seen as equals, and maybe privately at this point in his career, Breland might be seen as the slightly better corner than Peterson. Now, I'm not talking about career. I'm talking about right now.
But just where they're and here's the other thing. You know what will help those guys look even better? Daniil Hunter.
Oh God, yeah. Well, and like you said, that's going to help Kendricks. Now I am worried if Barr can't play. You know, Lynch, Conley, these are guys, and they're special teams guys. They're depth guys. You know, they signed. I believe he played for the Chargers last year. Nick Vigil, who's going to play the old.
He's their 3rd, right?
Yeah, he's Eric Wilson's spot.
Yeah, he's Wilson. Yeah,
but I mean, no matter what we say about Barr, you know, disappointment. He should do more. Anthony Barr knows the defense and brings a solid style of play that you just can't plug in Ryan Conley and be like, okay, kid, show us what you got.
And there's a reason why he's viewed as so important internally. Maybe we don't get it on the outside because you think he hasn't lived to what we thought he was going to be. But there's a reason why people speak so highly of him when you talk to either coaches or defensive players about what he brings to that defense. So, yeah, I mean, it would be a significant loss to not, I'm not saying it's, hopefully it's not anything that it's half a season or whatever.
Right.
But
Right.
He's been absent for so long here. It is concerning.
Got one more thing for you, Chip Scoggins, but before I do, I want to take this time to talk about our favorite IPA and Minnesota's favorite. That's right, Surly. The season is coming up, and Chipper, I got a feeling on Friday nights before Chip Scoggins covers a Gopher football game, or heck, on Saturday nights before you cover a Vikings game, I think there might be some Surly Furiouses in play. And if they're not at your house, they will be at mine. Pick up yours. In fact, you know what? You got a preseason game tomorrow night. Go pick up some Surly Furious at the local liquor store because you do enough settling in life. Crack open a Surly Furious and enjoy the IPA that revolutionized Minnesota craft beer. Don't settle, get surly. Me and my co-host certainly do, and we enjoy it. Last thing for you, sir. First round quarterbacks. How do you rank them? This has been an extremely interesting preseason, and it partially the Twins stinking has caused me to watch a ton of games. But when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, who, by the way, much better than I expected. How do you stack them up as far as guys that are potential starters? Now, I know Lawrence was announced as the starter, which is no surprise. But, Justin Fields, been impressive.
Yeah.
Mac Jones, been impressive.
First off, on Mac Jones, I liked him a lot in college. And
Right.
people, well, anybody can be good. You get that Alabama talent. And, I guess I understand that a little bit. But watch the guy play. Look at his accuracy. You still have to put the ball in the money. And yes, he's surrounded by a bunch of NFL players, linemen, wide receivers, so it's going to make him look good. But I think that was a discredit to him and disservice that people just assume it was because of who he played with. I really liked him. I thought he was a accuracy, smart, just all that stuff. I mean, I still go with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, yes, who are you surrounded by? But just physically and everything he does. I mean, you said that from his freshman year, you knew he was going to be the number one overall pick and he's going to start from day one. So to me, the most intriguing is still Fields, right? I mean, you're in a market, a massive market that's been quarterback deprived for generations. A team moved up to get you, and you put on a show in your first preseason game. So I'm most curious to see him, and Trey Lance too. Small college, didn't face the high level competition. I haven't seen what he's done or paid close attention to how he's played in the preseason games, but physically, yeah, I mean, is what you would think. Physically, I mean, yeah, physically he has all that you'd want, but the one knock is, okay, he played a level down in competition. So how much of a learning curve or gap does he have to close? But I still, to me, Fields is the most intriguing one. I think Lawrence, if you're going to tell me who's going to have the best career, I'd still say Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm. Zach Wilson, I watched a bunch of the first half against the Packers on Saturday. Looked really good too.
Yeah.
He is more prepared to play in the NFL than I thought. And Mac Jones is too. You know what Mac Jones has? He's got the old GPS tracker in the back of his head. He moves, he shuffles. Like that's the one thing Kirk can't do. He shuffles. He feels pressure. It's not like he's a great athlete, but if you can just move a little bit to sidestep that pressure, it buys you a ton of time.
Well, I will say this too, is like every year Bama has 4 NFL guys on their defense. And so, I mean, you go against their defense every day in practice, you're getting pretty good competition. Not saying it's NFL competition, but that's where I think there is value in that. Even if you have knocks on a guy's athleticism or speed or whatever, the fact that he was in that program, produced at an incredibly high level, I think he's prepared, right, to come through that program and have to compete the way you do it at Alabama with what they have 10 draft picks this year.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, you're right too. It probably helps him a lot.
But how many of these guys are going to start the opener? Just Lawrence?
I think Zach Wilson does.
Mac Jones is. What are they going to do there?
I think Mac Jones will start.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Cam had the 5-day quarantine.
That probably annoyed.
I think Mac Jones will start.
Yeah.
I think Lawrence, or I know that Trevor Lawrence will start. Zach Wilson will start. Fields won't start, but he will eventually.
Yeah.
And then Trey Lance will have a pack there. I think they're going to Taysom Hill, Trey Lance to start with. Garoppolo will start. Trey Lance will come in.
Not a bad plan. I mean, if you feel like you have 5 good plays that are change of pace or whatever, I would do it just to, get them on the field.
Purple Access. You can go home again, Chip Scoggins. You can go home again.
I love this homecoming. It feels right, doesn't it? It feels right.
Especially because it's sponsored by our friends at Brewing. And TCL, thank you as well. I'll talk to you next week, Chip. Thanks.
All right, brother. We'll see you.